Have you ever been sitting in a crowded room, maybe a corporate meeting or a loud dinner party, and noticed that one person who barely says a word? In a world that constantly rewards attention and noise, these people almost seem invisible. We live in a society that tells us the loudest person in the room is the smartest, the most confident, and the most successful. But what if everything we have been taught about quiet people is completely backward? What if their silence isn't a sign of weakness, but rather a calculated, highly intelligent way of navigating a chaotic world? Psychology suggests that this behavior is not random at all. In fact, it reveals an incredible amount about their confidence, their mindset, and their emotional intelligence. Today, we are going deep into the minds of people who speak less, pulling back the curtain on why they choose peace over performance and why their silence might just be the ultimate superpower in an overwhelmingly loud society. 1. Modern world and noise culture. To really understand this, we have to look at the environment we operate in today. We are surrounded by a constant demand for updates, opinions, and instant reactions. It is incredibly similar to the digital illusion of social media, where people constantly measure their worth against the highlight reels of everyone else. In this hyper-connected environment, speaking up constantly has become a way to prove that you exist and that you matter. 2. Quiet people think differently, but people who speak less operate on a completely different frequency. They have developed what psychologists call a high privacy orientation, meaning they place a massive premium on controlling exactly what they reveal to the world. They aren't holding back because they lack thoughts. They are holding back because they heavily value their mental space and protect it at all costs. While the vast majority of the population desperately seeks validation through constant chatter, eager for the real-life equivalent of likes and comments, quiet individuals rely entirely on self-validation. They simply do not need to announce their every passing thought to feel good about themselves, which is a massive and subtle sign of deep inner security. 3. Misconception about silence. Are you starting to see how much power there is in not needing the room to validate your existence? The core problem we face is that our society frequently misdiagnoses silence. We automatically assume that if someone isn't speaking, they must be shy, antisocial, or completely lacking in confidence. But psychologists point out that these assumptions are wildly inaccurate. The truth is deeply rooted in something called self-concept clarity. Research into this area shows that individuals who feel less need to broadcast their lives or thoughts actually have an incredibly strong sense of who they are. They already know their values, they know their goals, and they know what truly matters to them without needing a single drop of external approval. This makes them far less likely to chase fleeting conversational trends or jump into heated arguments just to compare themselves to others. Their happiness and self-worth do not depend on how the room reacts to them. It comes entirely from within. 4. Deep psychology traits. Let's look at the evidence and the deeper psychological traits at play here. When you analyze people who intentionally speak less, you quickly find that their behavior is closely linked to secure self-esteem. This is a unique, highly resilient type of confidence that quite literally does not need attention to survive. Think about that for a second. Most people speak to prove their worth, much like posting a selfie online to get a quick dopamine hit. But quiet people do not need to prove their worth because they already feel complete. Psychologists have noted that people carrying this specific kind of emotional balance are generally less anxious, less desperate for approval, and much more intensely focused on real-world goals rather than superficial chatter. Furthermore, they possess a fascinating cognitive trait known as an internal locus of evaluation. This is a scientific way of saying that they judge themselves strictly by their own personal standards, not by the shifting, arbitrary expectations of the people around them. They are deep thinkers, not show-offs, and they prefer to process their thoughts fully before they ever let them leave their mouths. 5. Real-life impact, relationships, and work. The real-world impact of this mindset is massive, especially when it comes to personal relationships and professional environments. Because they process everything internally first, when they finally do choose to speak, their words carry incredible weight and command immediate respect. People who speak less generally prefer authentic conversations over superficial interactions. They have absolutely zero interest in the endless, exhausting cycle of small talk or the performative outrage that dominates so much of our modern discourse. They intuitively understand the mechanics of social comparison theory, the psychological trap where people constantly judge their own behind-the-scenes reality against the loud, curated performances of others. By choosing to stay low-key in conversations, they effectively build a fortress around their mental health, protecting themselves from that endless comparison cycle. They actively choose peace over performance. In a corporate setting or a personal relationship, this means they are the steady anchor in a stormy sea, observing everything, absorbing the details everyone else missed, and speaking only when it genuinely matters. 6. Hidden truth about society. This leads to some highly unexpected insights about human nature that most people never realize. We are culturally conditioned to view extroversion and constant communication as the ultimate goal, but the reality is that forced, nonstop communication often stems from profound insecurity. The compulsion to fill every silence is usually driven by a deeply hidden fear of being forgotten or ignored. Quiet people completely challenge this entire paradigm. They expose the uncomfortable controversy that much of our daily communication is entirely meaningless noise designed to feed fragile egos. By refusing to play the game, people who speak less actually disrupt the room. Their silence makes overly talkative people uncomfortable, not because the quiet person is doing anything wrong, but because their silence forces the loud people to sit with their own thoughts. Quiet individuals don't need to be seen or heard to feel seen. That level of self-sufficiency is incredibly rare, and frankly, it is a little intimidating to those who constantly need an audience to feel alive. 7. Future, importance of silence, looking to the future. The implications of this behavioral divide are only going to grow more pronounced. As the world gets louder, as digital illusions continue to demand our constant engagement and reaction, the ability to sit in silence will become an elite, highly sought-after skill. The endless comparison cycle is burning people out at record rates, leaving them mentally exhausted and emotionally drained. Those who have mastered the art of holding their tongue, who operate strictly with an internal locus of evaluation, are going to be the ones who maintain their mental clarity and emotional balance. They will be the leaders who listen, the innovators who build in private, and the individuals who remain totally grounded while everyone else is swept up in the noise. Their quietness is not a retreat from the world. It is a highly evolved, sophisticated strategy for surviving it intact. 8. Final message. So, the next time you are in a room and you notice someone who is completely comfortable just sitting back and staying quiet, do not make the mistake of assuming they are shy, disengaged, or antisocial. Do not assume they have nothing important to say. Instead, recognize that they might just be far more grounded, emotionally intelligent, and self-aware than the loudest people in the room. They have mastered the absolute hardest game of all, the game of being completely secure in their own mind. They don't need the applause, they don't need the external validation, and they certainly don't need to shout to prove they exist. That is exactly what real confidence looks like. If you found this deep dive into the human mind interesting, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives like this, because on this channel we don't just look at what people do, we decode their minds.